Okay, so it's a video tutorial on precasting a facade. Basically, how we define in Revit a precast concrete facade. This is more of a straightforward way of doing it. They're more sophisticated and I guess detailed way, but I think it's quite useful to know this process before you get into complicated things such as family types, like adaptive components, and so it's using rebuilds basically into the facade. So I'm gonna just make this facade like with the precast concrete elements, and just explain the process in a way. So let's go a little bit. Precast, as you know, just the elements that are isolated. You can mount one by one singularly into components. You can see these images. You prefab this in a different place, and you locate them directly to where they have been thought to be placed. They have all kinds of detailing, so they match with the slab. As in this case, you have like a side beam that will be attached to the element. So that there's also kinds of connection methods out there in the market between the different casted elements, the prefab elements between themselves, and between, as you can see, the anchoring point between the slabs and the panels, the prefab precast panels. No? You have anchoring between the different precast elements and between the elements and the slabs, so the whole system is stable. No? So obviously we're not getting into details, but yes, we are getting into the general concept of how we could represent that in Revit. Okay, so let's start with it. As I said, we're going to use rebuilds. So the first thing will be, let me see if we have anything here. Okay, we have the project that we're dealing with at class, and we have a very simple facade element with a basic generic wall 8 inches. So the first thing will be to edit type and make sure that you duplicate this one, and you call it something like precast concrete. And again, it will be recommendable that you put your thickness. I'm just going to keep it as 8 inch. Say okay. I'm going to edit, and it is structural, not for the building, but it's structural as in it holds itself, similar to cordon wall system, or again depending on how this precast system goes, if it's between slabs, if it flies out of from in regards to the slab, or so it could be structural or not structural. It could be even a finished material. So I'm gonna say finished because in our case we have the columns that are actually the structural elements. No, so in materials would be nice to change that from by category to just say precast concrete and say okay, and it's 8 inches. The thickness could change depending on the proposal, and say okay. And you should do that with all the walls, obviously. Now they change color because they're slightly different color in terms of the materials, and it's precast 8 inch thickness. Okay, so now here's the simple step. It's similar to the previous video tutorial I have made regarding rebuild. So we can say, well, extend that and say rebuild, and there's a default rebuild that we can place, as you remember, associated to the wall. So we need to make our own little rebuild detail and start propagating that detail along the facade. Okay, so let's go say new family. I'm gonna scroll pressing Control out and go to profiles. There's a section of profiles. Rebuild, open. First thing I'm gonna do is save. I'm gonna call these, I'm gonna put it, for example, desktop for now. You should keep it in very well organized with your Revit components, and I'm gonna call it rebuild let's say precast concrete, and I'm gonna call it 8 inches wall, and then it's gonna be like half inch. You know, the detail is gonna be half inch. I'm gonna say save. It doesn't support, yeah, obviously. So we're gonna just say 8-inch wall for now. Say, oh, sorry. There you go, 8-inch wall. Okay, so we know what it's referring to, and what we're going to do is just a couple lines, so similar to the detail that we had here, if you remember. And obviously there are millions of details of how it could be. I'm going to give a gap of half an inch here, and you obviously during fabrication and mounting, you will put different insulation and different insulation elements, and you will also detail it in terms of locking correspondingly the different prefab elements within each other. Okay, so that's a more of a on-site type of construction methodology that we don't have to get into that level of detail unless you're generating a detail from the specific section and plan in Revit. You will just deal with it more with 2D drawing components and insert them specifically to that detail. We only want to do this little gap. So let's go to Revit. I'm going to say line, Li. And I'm just going to start drawing like 1/4 inch. So there we go. I'm going to say half an inch offset towards the bottom. And again, you can just drag these guys one by one and delete that. Where it says wall is where it's going to be associated with. You're going to create another line. Again, you could do more, like of 8-inch here, take it down, trimming, TR, trimming, delete, and it has to be close, so that has to be generated there. You could do some very simple parameters, like, for example, selecting this guy, given the length there, and creating a new parameter, and you can change that depending on the wall that you have. But in this case, we're going to just stay put with 8 inches, so that should be fine. I'm going to save it, Control S. I'm going to load it into the project. Okay, nothing happens because what you have to do is say wall, rebuild. Now it's going to still take the default rebuild, as you can see. So we have to edit type and duplicate the rebuild as well. So I'm going to say rebuild. And again, you could have several types. It could be like vertical and horizontal, or vertical only horizontal, and it could be half gap or half-inch gap, and say okay. Now within that new generated rebuild, you have to search for the rebuild precast 8 wall that we created before. We say okay, and now the moment we get close to any of the walls, actually even the old ones, but we want to put in the new one, you will be able to place your rebuild. I'm going to just do it without really caring much and see what the result is. It creates this little gap, which is pretty much what we want. And you know, that's perfect. You can afterwards just tab into the rebuilds and move them around freely. You can also be more specific about the dimensions and copy them. For example, tab, you see there's dimensions. You can say give me 20, so it moves exactly 20. You can say CO as in copying, and again say 20. And you can also say obviously wall, rebuild. It stays there. Remember the last one, and press horizontal here, and the same way. You can tab into that element, say 20 or whatever dimension, CO. You can make it horizontal. That's not probably the best way to draw it. What I would do at this point is select things like WF, it's wireframe. I will select the wall. I will also select the rebuild, like press Control to select it as well. And let me see if I can see it. I need the floor. There is one. Control, and then I can go here and say something like isolate category. Okay, HL, WF. You can go to the elevation that you're interested in. Say west. Well, you probably have to do the same again for this view. Reveal, control wall, WF, and again you do height category, so isolate category. So basically what I'm trying to do is that you can play with your reveals from the west elevation, move it around more in relation to the walls. You could keep the stairs here so you see exactly where that's going. You don't necessarily need the stair unless they're affecting the windows, which it makes sense most of the times, but you can be free of moving your reveals both horizontally and vertically in relation to the floors. You could have the structure. You could it's very very convenient to work in an elevation, so you have control of what's happening behind. Okay, so after you're done with that, in terms of your reveals, probably if you want to create a reveal in there's specifically different, like if you want to create one here vertical and place it exactly there, the problem is going to be that you're cutting also this little notch of this piece, which could be the case, could be not, depending, but it's not enough most of the times to create one reveal and hope to have a solution for all different connections. You're going to have to start thinking of different reveals for different conditions within the same wall. So at this point, I would recommend coming here, saying save as family, and start naming this in a way that is related to the detail. It says corner detail. Save. You can move this to the corner, save it and load it. And what you can do is go to the 3D, select the rebuild, edit type, and you can say gap corner detail. Say OK, select the corner detail. Okay, and it changes so it matches perfectly. Now it's just a matter of probably having on one side how the idea of rebuilds work in Revit and how you can make as many rebuilds to define those little gaps in Revit, and at the same time you need to know your details. You need to go back and forth from the research of your structural elements, as in what kind of a rebuild, what kind of a gap definition you have between the concrete blocks. So the good thing about this is not only that we can place those, we can select also the gaps by tabbing again and just getting rid of some of the reveals in that way, and keep on generating wall reveals horizontal. Let's say gap, you put it down here, you tab into them and you take them down. So basically you can construct any kind of conception of what the precast element is just by, again, moving and sliding. Let's say copy, or creating another rebuild horizontal, tabbing into it. Let me see, tab and sliding it to that point, slide it to that point, and you have all kinds of possibilities. Also, obviously, vertically slide in there, and you can put another one. So all kinds of details you can do, and it respects the rebuild in both directions. At this point, probably the biggest confusion is like how start managing windows, and so, well, it's just as simple as placing your windows and you can place them in interiorly. Well, here we had obviously a problem of our slab, but you most you get the idea that you can place the window either inside of your element, or you can place the window uh, cutting your rebuild elements. No, so let me do it again. Let's say big one here. Now the reason why we don't see the window itself is just because we have it hidden in this point, which it takes me to how would you elaborate a precast sheet defining the exact elements and in their definitions. So at this point, let me place another like big window here. Let's say here. Imagine this precast. Let me tap into this and take it down here. Good. And let me imagine you want to take elevations of this. It would be a matter of and dimensions of that. You would be a matter of going to the west elevation, hiding probably your floors, or just keeping the floors in the background, and start like generating different elevation views for each of the elements, and creating your annotation elements with a line. You can start dimensioning the specific. Let me see if it goes now. Well, obviously, what's happening here is that we need to make sure we reset this so we have the windows and everything, and we take care of how each of the hidden lines here. I'm gonna hit that one, and now I'm gonna go linear from this point to that point. Is this from this point to that point? Is that this point to this point? So basically, what I'm doing is dimensioning the precast element exactly, with a level of precision, or typical of a CAD or a drawing element. So there we go. Obviously, this should be prepared carefully and in different views. You probably want to hide in those sheets the categories of the windows, so you only have the openings. Let me see why. Hide elements. Those are associated to the windows, so that's why they're turning off. So you probably need to just associate them differently. But anyway, I think at this point, what I will do is start duplicating with detailing and renaming a different section and calling it something like concrete, precast concrete facade, and then you need a code of what is the name of it and its location, and it could be like by columns and rows and exact relationship. So I'm just going to invent a very simple code as in A3, so you know where it's located and the name of it, and you know where to find it. And now at this point, it will be just a simple way of turning on your crop view. And as we did in the beginning of how you tell a story of different things, how would you tell the story of a singular precast defined element? So this would be the way. You will have the levels relationship, you will have the grids that are associated to that element. You could obviously start changing in terms of detailing what is the thickness of the lines that don't matter to you. Like, you can make these ones thicker just by changing more of a 2D annotation techniques, and that would be one element within your drawing to define this specific precast element that goes in your facade with a code A3 that you can locate perfectly in your general facade, and perfectly organized. Overall elements should be placed probably in the same sheet if they fit. Otherwise, you can create as many sheets for different components of prefab elements, no? So this will be the way to go through the entire process of definition of a precast concrete facade in Revit. And again, this is a more of a straightforward and I think simple way of performing this this operation. So hopefully it helped you.